What is going on, traders? We got a lot to talk about. What an absolutely insane day. I did not make a video for YouTube yesterday, but I did make an emergency video last night for Discord members, letting Discord members know that things are looking bad and we may see a dump pretty soon. And crazy enough, today we ended up getting that dump towards the downside. Ultimately, we ended up recovering majority of that dump, but I do not think the drop is over. So if you were part of the Discord and you watched this emergency video, congratulations to you. Also, congratulations to Discord members who took our Tesla puts today. I alerted 330 strike puts for June 06. You guys see exactly where Tesla is. We did take a loss on Nvidia calls, but we made that back tenfold on these Tesla puts. So congratulations to Discord members. Today we saw Tesla drop all the way from about 360 all the way down to about 345, more or less. So as you guys can see here, this is some of my profit. I actually made a lot more than this if I scroll further down. Ended up with about 1,500. We go to the winners tab. Here we see a lot of Discord members made money off of this play as well. This guy right here, he took the Tesla calls. He made $1,600 off of that. This guy right here, he's been killing it as usual. Nothing else to really say. He traded the upside on the triple Qs, made tons of profit there, as you guys can see. So a lot of Discord members made money in the Discord. Here she took Nvidia puts, 138 puts. You guys see here she made $1,750. She took Tesla puts as well, made another $465. I believe he's kind of new here, but he made profit as well. He made a nice $980 off the Tesla alert that we alerted today. And here's me right here, made $2,000 off of the Tesla alert that I put out today. I took the wrong strike price. I alerted 330 strike, but I ended up somehow taking 320 strike. But a win is a win. I would have made more money had I taken the right strike, but it is what it is. I'll take $2,000 any day. All right, so a lot of winners in the Discord group. Again, we took a loss on Nvidia calls, but we made it back tenfold. We only lost about $80 per contract on Nvidia calls, and ultimately we made about $200 per contract on that on Tesla puts. So congratulations once again to Discord members. Discord link will be in the description below. So let's talk about it. So something we talked about in the last video, right? The last YouTube video, not the Discord emergency video, but the last YouTube video. And that thing that we talked about was Nvidia, right? And this is what I was warning about. Nvidia has a terrible habit of doing the inverse of its earnings the next day. And we saw exactly that happen between yesterday and today, right? And so if you're new to this channel, what exactly do I mean by this? Well, if you go in the past, right, let's erase all this for a bit. But if you go back in the past, every earnings, or at least majority of Nvidia's earnings, it'll make one move and then it'll do the inverse the next day, right? So for this earnings here, you had somewhat of a consolidation, IV crush, whatever you want to call it. And then the next day, Nvidia ended up tanking towards the downside. Not only did it tank, but it continued in that direction for a few days to multiple weeks, right? You saw a jump back towards the upside, but ultimately you ended up tanking all the way towards the downside. The earnings prior to that, you see the same exact thing, right? You had somewhat of a consolidation for its earnings, IV crush. You pumped a little bit towards the upside, and then you ended up dumping towards the downside. You kept creating these lower highs, and then ultimately you just crashed and burned, right? This earnings here, pretty much the same thing, right? You did your thing for Nvidia earnings the day of, and then ultimately you ended up tanking. And so one thing I let you guys know in that last video is that whatever Nvidia does the next day after its earnings, it historically continues in that direction. And so if we're judging off the past and what we've seen based off history, every time after Nvidia's earnings, whatever it does after that earnings, it continues in that direction. So it's safe to assume that we may see the same thing happen here, right? We got Nvidia earnings on Wednesday, May 28th. We got Nvidia earnings. We did our little thing here. We made our doji, right? We made our little doji consolidation here like we always do. And next day, we pumped towards the upside. We gapped up towards the upside, and then we gave it all back. And so again, if we're going off history, it's safe to assume that we may continue towards the downside when it comes to Nvidia. Now, let's bring all of our levels back. And so looking at the daily time frame, this trend right here, we bounced here, we attempted to bounce here, we bounced here, we broke, we retest, we broke down, we retested again, and now we're breaking back below this trend line. Not only are we breaking back below this trend line, but we have broken back below support. Our key level here was 136. Now, if you've been paying attention to NVIDIA in the past, you saw that a lot of times NVIDIA had a very hard time breaking above 136 until its earnings, right? Once earnings came through, NVIDIA finally broke above 136 just to ultimately give it all back. Now we're back below 136. So your key level here goes without saying is 136. After that, you're looking at your psych level of 135, which is these guys right here. All right here. So we talk about these inside bar candles all the time. Every time NVIDIA gets within the range of these inside bar candles, NVIDIA rolls over. Here you have an inside bar candle, NVIDIA pumps, rolls over. Another inside bar candle, NVIDIA pumps, rolls over, right? And you keep seeing this like clockwork. So now you have another inside bar pattern here. You got a little bit above it. Earnings pushed NVIDIA a little bit above it, but ultimately you ended up failing. Bear stepped in. Now you're back below a very key level. And so the question is, where does NVIDIA go from here? Or where do I think NVIDIA is going to go from here? Well, if we're judging based off history, I would say that NVIDIA, as long as it stays below 136 and it gets below 135 psych level, chances are we're heading towards the low 130s, 129. Lowest I'm looking at is this gap fill all the way at around 117, 118. Okay. Again, we look back in the past, NVIDIA, when it tanks towards the downside after its earnings, it does it for days. It does it for weeks. So if NVIDIA is going to tank for days to a week, it's safe to assume that the market may do the same, and we may see the market continue towards the downside heading into next week. So again, I do think NVIDIA, as long as it stays below 136, we do have a chance to hit at least at the minimum 130, 129. Lowest I'm looking at right now is between 117, 120. All right, on NVIDIA. Can we head lower than that? Yes, but we'll talk about that if we get close to those targets. All right, so that's what we're looking at for the downside when it comes to NVIDIA. Now, when it comes to upside, I mean, it goes without saying, you need to break above 145. You break above 145, chances are you're heading towards 150. But even if you break above 145 and head towards 150, again, if you look back in the past, every time we get within the range of these inside bar candles, NVIDIA rolls over. So I'm hoping that some of you listened in the last video when I encouraged to take profit once the market opens, because again, NVIDIA has a terrible habit of doing the inverse of its earnings the next day, and then it will continue in that direction the next day. So my mistake on taking NVIDIA calls was thinking that this time would be different, but I should have trusted what I said. I should have trusted myself. So I'm hoping somebody else benefited off that video, because I definitely did not, because I did not listen to myself in that video, and we ended up taking a loss. But of course, we made it back on Tesla. So we're going to talk about Tesla. Of course, we're going to get into SPY and all that fun stuff, but I want to talk about Tesla because I've been letting Discord members know for quite some time that depending on what NVIDIA does for its earnings or the day after its earnings, I'm looking at puts for Tesla. And we made an absolute killing on this thing. Absolute bag on Tesla. I mean, again, you're missing out if you're not a part of the Discord. I do not take my losses lightly. When I take a loss, I make them back tenfold, and I make sure Discord members eat tenfold as well. All right. If you have been part of the group for quite some time, you know that we do not take losses lightly at all. But when we're talking about Tesla, we are below some very key levels. It goes without saying, your first key level was 350. You broke below that. Your next key level was 352. You saw bulls try to break us above 352, but ultimately we cannot make that happen. You have a nice bearish engulfing candle on the 4-hour time frame. It looks like you're attempting to fill this gap all the way to 340, which I think Tesla is going to head towards, or I think Tesla's next target is 340. Lowest I'm looking at is about 330. Now, what's important to note here is that Tesla does have its robo-taxi event coming up. I believe it's June 12th. The dates keep switching, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. First it was June 1st, or rumored to be June 1st, then it was like the end of June, now it's June 12th. So it can change, right? But I do imagine that if we're going to continue to tank, I do think we're going to tank into maybe the robo taxi event, and then maybe we'll see some buyers step in. But usually Tesla events, and I talked about this with another Discord member, or we joked about it, I should say. Usually when Tesla has an event, or even Apple has an event, usually the market sells off, or they sell off. So they're always high overhyped, and then next thing you know, nothing happens, and it ends up selling off. So we'll see. But ultimately, Tesla has not only broken below key levels, but it's broken this trend here. You bounced here, you bounced here. So it's safe to assume that as long as we stay below this trend line, we have a bearish engulfing candle. Best case scenario for the bulls here is that you simply retest this upside here all the way at around 350. Highest we could be looking at is about 355, 356 before heading back towards the downside and testing that 330 level. I imagine bulls are going to be very much present here. So if you are looking to get into puts for Tesla, we did do a little lotto play heading into close. I got like one contract on this thing now, but we did do a little lotto play, did 330 strike puts for Tesla heading into next week. So we'll see how this plays out. But I do imagine that once you hit 330 on Tesla, bulls are going to step in. You have a lot of bulls in this area, right? So you definitely want to be careful here. You bounced here, you bounced here, you bounced here. You got a lot of bullish candles here. So these guys are foaming at the mouth. They're going to look for their opportunity to step back in. They're going to look for an opportunity to buy the dip. Personally, I would love for Tesla to at least at minimum see 300 to 80. Someone asked me, am I looking to buy shares or buy more shares because we loaded up shares at 220 and we're currently up on those shares. And so if I'm going to buy shares on Tesla, I'm looking at around 280, 300, somewhere around that range before I look to buy again on Tesla. So me personally, I'm looking at another between a 20% drop, something like that. So let's do the math here. So I would be looking at another about 50% drop, 50% drop. I don't know where I got 20%, sorry. 60% drop. If Tesla drops about 60%, around 300 to 80, I will definitely load more shares. I probably will not go heavy though. I will probably go light because it will just ruin my average. If I'm looking to average big on Tesla, I will be looking at 150 at that point. Okay, at this point. Will we head to 150? Who knows? I'm not really thinking about that, but that's what I would consider a very, very good average in. All right. Right now, I'm in a very good position on Tesla, so I have no interest in loading like crazy when it comes to any type of drops. All right. So we'll see. But ultimately, that's what I have for Tesla. We just could not get above 370. If Tesla manages to get above 370, I think 400 is definitely on the table. All right. You have 4 waves here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This fourth wave here, it looks like you're just pretty much rejecting here. So yeah, if this is a fourth wave, you're going to see a massive drop on Tesla. All right, we'll see. Ultimately, the market has the final say. So Tesla, Tesla is going to follow what the market does. At least most cases it does. All right, so that's what we're looking at for Tesla. All right, your key levels here, again, is 350. You stay below 350, chances are you're heading towards the 330s. All right. We went over NVIDIA, so let's talk about SPY, of course. So SPY, you're below a key level here, 590 and 592. Okay, 590, 592. Your main level of all levels that we've seen bulls defend today is 585. All right, 585. So we saw bulls defend this level. You can also argue that there is an inverse head and shoulders pattern here. So where is it? Where is it? There's an inverse head and shoulders pattern here. You guys can see it. Shoulder here, head here, another shoulder here. So very much possible that this could play out. But as long as we're below this trend line, I really doubt it. And not only that, but something I warned about in the emergency video, in the Discord emergency video, is that yes, you have this inverse head and shoulders pattern, but it got invalidated when you broke back below the neckline. Now, can it play out still? Sure. But typically when you roll back into a pattern, especially within this neckline, chances are you're going to continue back in that direction. All right. But this is a very news driven market. I could be completely wrong here just based off how, 1 minute we get good news, next minute we get bad news, and the market's just all over the place. So just keep an eye on the SPY at 585. That is your key level. You break below 585, chances are you're heading towards 580s. You're going to finish filling this gap towards the downside. You break below 580. On the SPY, you're heading towards 576. Between 576, 575, 575 will be your psych level, and then from there, chances are you're heading to the 570s. So that's what we're looking at for the SPY when it comes to downside. All right, when it comes to upside here, you just obviously want to see the SPY get above 592. It gets above 592, 595 is your next target, and then from there, obviously you're heading towards 600. All right, so that's what we're looking at for the SPY. It's also important to note that you are creating bearish divergence here. Okay, bearish divergence, and what I mean by that is that if you look at the SPY and the triple Qs is creating higher highs, but the SPY is creating a lower high. All right, so if you put the charts together, I forgot how to do that, but if you put the two charts next to each other, you will see that there is bearish divergence between the SPY, okay, on a daily time frame between the SPY and the triple Qs. So something to add to your confirmation as far as potentially seeing more downside. Another thing is that bears are these cocaine bears, these demons, these gorillas, whatever they are, these guys are foaming at the mouth. They're just forming up a whole formation here. So you definitely want to be careful here as well. All right. Best case scenario, you retest 522 before heading back towards the downside. Now, if you can manage to mount above 522, we saw an attempt heading into close to get above 522, but bulls ended up failing, and we ended up back towards, or we closed the day as a doji. Now, historically, what happens on Mondays? Well, Mondays usually continue what happened on Fridays, so it's safe to assume that based off history that Monday we're going to continue to see more downside. So if we add everything up, if we're talking about Nvidia, right, and Nvidia continuing its move towards the downside based off what we've seen in the past, and if we're talking about what historically happens on Mondays based off what we've seen in the past, it's safe to assume that next week we more than likely will end up being bearish, or we continue to see more downside. Now, obviously this call can change, okay? This can definitely change just based off news, right? Because we are in a very, very news driven market. One minute we got tariffs, the next minute we don't got tariffs, the next minute it's appealed, the next minute it's not appealed. We know Powell talked to Trump. We don't know what about for some reason. But at the end of the day, very news driven market. So definitely pay attention to the news over the weekend as well. All right, so Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, this is something I was talking about in the Discord as well. When it comes to Bitcoin, all right, when it comes to Bitcoin, as long as you stay below 107K, chances are you're heading towards 103K, 102K. And so far, we have been right on the money with this thing. I think it's going to continue to see more downside. If you're talking about a leading indicator, this will be the leading indicator of all leading indicators, in my opinion. Very good leading indicator. We saw Bitcoin tank, so it was safe to assume, or we saw Bitcoin tank the day prior to today, which was obviously yesterday. I don't know why I said it like that, but we saw Bitcoin tank, right? And so if we're talking about Bitcoin being a leading indicator, you shouldn't be surprised that we ended up tanking today. Not only that, but if you're looking at the 4 hour, you're just creating lower highs. You got a high here, lower high here, lower high here, and now you're creating another lower high here. Now you officially have a lower low. So over the weekend, we may see, a pump towards the upside real quick, create another, lower high or something like that, and then head further towards the downside. So I'm looking at for Bitcoin right now. I don't see any chance of an upside right now. If we manage to get above 107K, then we'll talk about it. From there, you're looking at about 109K if you manage to get above 107K. So that's what I'm looking at for Bitcoin. So that's pretty much everything we went over. If we're looking at the VIX, this is something else I wanted to talk to you guys about, or I warned you guys about, I should say. The VIX is within this zone right here. And historically, the VIX continues to bounce off the zone. Now, what I will say is that you still have this gap fill, and it's kind of bothering me all the way at around 17.5. But I would say that the VIX is probably going to head towards 25 from here. If we're talking about it, if we're talking about the market dropping, I would say that the VIX is going to knock out 25. Okay, around 25, 26, 27. These guys are probably going to step in, and then we'll probably see a rally back towards the upside, probably towards all-time highs at that point, just to clear this gap out. Now, we can obviously do it now or heading into next week. That's fine as well. But ultimately, I do think this is the final drop that I was talking about. I told you guys I do expect one more drop before we head towards all-time highs in the overall market. Also, if we look at the VIX right here, I mean, bulls are very much present here. This is going to be very hard to take out, and bears are trying. Okay, bears are trying. Now, this is a volatility index, so bulls, bears, it's kind of irrelevant when you're talking about this, but they do trade this. Bulls trade this, bears trade this, traders do trade this, right? But you do have a lot of bulls within this range here, so it's going to be really tough. We're obviously going to need some pretty significant news for us to either, break below this area and start filling this gap all the way towards about 17.5. All right, so that's what I'm looking at for the VIX. I personally think the VIX is just going to pump towards the upside. We'll probably see a move at least at minimum towards 21.8, 22. Highest I'm looking at right now is about 25. All right, so that's what I'm looking at for the VIX. Apple, this man, Apple is just so annoying, man, so annoying. So when it comes to Apple, right, you have this very, very, I mean, so clean inverse hammer pattern, but I mean, you got movement, right? You got to move all the way to about 203, so that's something. But it just takes so much to get there. It really takes a lot for Apple to just move anywhere towards the upside right now. So Apple does have an event coming up at around June 9th, and crazy enough, it's the same week of the Robotaxi event, so that's going to be very interesting. So I do imagine at some point in time, either the event itself is going to cause Apple to pump towards this 220 gap fill, or we're going to see a pump sometime next week, maybe the end of next week, towards this gap fill. Okay, so I'm not guaranteeing it, but if Apple is just completely done here, right? Because we broke this trend. But if Apple is completely done here, then chances are we're going to head back towards the low 180s. All right. Especially if Apple gives up 200 all over again. I talked about this in the Discord. I would just say 199 is your key level at this point. You get below 199 on Apple, you're heading back towards 197. And then from there, you're looking at this area right here where there's a lot of bulls in this area. So Apple needs some pretty bad news. Now, historically, Apple, every time Apple has an event, it tanks. Okay, it tanks the day of the event or after the event. Every time Tesla has an event, it tanks the day of or after its event. So the following week after this upcoming week is going to be very interesting. We'll see. We're not there yet, but we'll see. All right, so we talked about, let's talk about IWM real quick. So IWM still has this massive inverse head and shoulders pattern. It's very clean. It has a gap fill all the way at around 203. I think it filled it. It looks like it, yeah, it looks like it pretty much filled it. But if IWM, if we're going to see more downside, I imagine IWM is going to head towards this gap fill at around 188. We saw the Discord bot alert 191 puts. It's going to be interesting to see if those are still in play. All right. So heading into next week, in conclusion, guys, I think we're going to see more downside just simply based off NVIDIA and what historically happens on Mondays. At minimum, I believe Monday we're going to see more downside. And then from there, we'll have to see what happens. Obviously, I'll make another video after that day or the day of, and then we'll see what happens from there. But as far as everything else, as far as Tesla and all that, I think Tesla is going to see at least 330. I think Nvidia is going to see 130 at minimum, and I think SPY is going to head towards 570s, 580, between 570, 580, somewhere around this range. At least start filling one or two of these gaps towards the downside before pumping back towards the upside. All right, so that's what I'm looking at in the overall market. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Discord link will be in the description below. I have a lot of plays set up for next week, and yeah. Until the next video, traders, have a good one.